In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, the great warrior, surveys the opposing armies on the field of battle. On seeing his teachers, friends, and relatives in the enemy camp, he is overcome with doubt, and abandoning his bow and arrow, refuses to fight. He appeals to Krishna, his divine charioteer, and Krishna, the avatar or divine personality, tells him to fulfill his duty as a warrior, and to do so with equanimity. The avatar restores Dharma.
We studied the writings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and this is an important group activity. We need not inquire whether the stories about Krishna are transcripts, however loose, of his acts on earth, or are symbol representations of what Krishna was and is for man, of the divinity expressing itself in the figure of Krishna. To the physical mind, only the words and facts and acts of a man matter. To the inner mind, it is the spiritual happenings in him that matter. Even the teachings of Buddha and Christ are spiritually true, not as mere mental teachings, but as the expression of spiritual states or happenings in them, which, by their life on earth, they made possible, or even dynamically potential in others. The avatar, the guru, have no meaning if they do not stand for the eternal. It is that makes them what they are for the worshipper or the disciple.
The avatar restores Dharma. To Arjuna, Krishna explains, "Whensoever righteousness, or adharam, declines and fades on earth, and unrighteousness arises and flourishes, then do I send forth myself. For the deliverance of the good, for the destruction of the evildoers, for the enthroning of right, the dharma, I am born from age to age." If you imagine Dharma as a set of concentric circles, the innermost circle represents swaradharma, or duty according to one's inner nature. The second concentric circle represents ashramadharma, duty according to one's age or stage of life. The third circle represents varnadharma, or duty according to one's life work, according to one's caste. These three dharmas, swaradharma, ashramadharma, and varnadharma, comprise the Hindu's ordinary moral and religious duty. But the Hindu also has a duty to achieve spiritual liberation. This duty, called moksha dharma, or simply moksha, is called extraordinary because it supersedes the other dharmas. On the battlefield, Arjuna was immobilized by the conflict between his duty as a warrior and his horror of civil war. So in Arjuna's case, his varnadharma is turned in on itself and results in his disequilibrium. Then Krishna, the avatar, shows Arjuna, the representative of embattled humanity, how to resolve these conflicts, how to realize Dharma. In acting through Arjuna, Krishna effectively works through all humanity and eliminates all conflicts by showing the unity in Brahman, the divine, of each individual and between all parts of the world. Individual selves are ordinarily bound by the limitations of the individual ego. The I, or me, forms a tight shell around the individual, preventing it from uniting with the divine in other selves. So, in effect, individual selves are separated from each other, and consequently from Brahman as well. This separateness is the condition of adharma, which the avatar comes to eliminate. Through an avatar such as Krishna, Dharma is restored, moksha is achieved, and each soul becomes as egoless and as infinite as Brahman. Because humanity falls repeatedly into adharma, the avatar must come forth time and again. Ram, the perfect husband to his faithful wife Sita, symbolizes heroism and noble conduct. Krishna, teacher of Arjuna and later the divine lover of the divine Radha, establishes the ideal of action performed in devotion to the divine. Some Hindus revere Gautama the Buddha as an avatar. The Buddha teaches and exemplifies the eternal peace which follows the elimination of the ego and its desires. Some modern Hindus consider Jesus an avatar, as a human embodiment of divine love, and some also include Muhammad, though Orthodox Islam rejects the idea of the divine embodied in human form. Some modern Hindu saints are also regarded as avatars. Chaitanya, the 16th century Bengali, expresses the power of an ecstatic devotion to Krishna. Sri Ramakrishna, another Bengali, worshipped the god Kali, the consort of Shiva, but he also enjoyed direct experiences of Krishna, the Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad. Sri Ramakrishna represents an intense love for the divine in its many manifestations. Mahatma Gandhi did not emphasize the concept of the avatar, but millions of Indians associate him with the heroic fidelity of Ram and the divinely inspired action taught by Krishna. Unlike Gandhi, Sri Aurobindo has written extensively on the avatar concept and did not discourage his disciples from regarding him as an avatar of the present age. Krishna is worshipped as an infant, as the youthful lover of Radha, and as the divine embodiment of unity and multiplicity. But it is the heroic Krishna, the divine teacher of Arjuna on the field of battle, who most decisively influenced Mahatma Gandhi and Sri Aurobindo, the two 20th century spiritual leaders who are themselves regarded as avatars. Mahatma Gandhi regarded Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita as the supreme source for knowledge of the truth. I find a verse here and a verse there, and I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming tragedies, and my life has been full of external tragedies, and if they have left no visible, no indelible scar on me, I owe it all to the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, Sri Aurobindo wrote, "The teacher of the Gita is not only the God in man who unveils himself in the world of knowledge, but the God in man who moves our whole world of action, by and for whom all human life travels and progresses. He is the secret master of works and sacrifice, and the friend of the human peoples."
Sri Aurobindo is an avatar in the line of the Hindu avatars, well, Krishna being the main one as people understand him. But Hindus, having that wide philosophy of acceptance, they also treat Christ, Buddha, or Muhammad as avatars. And surely Sri Aurobindo follows in the line of that consciousness, and he brings out much higher consciousness in time than the other avatars had to give. And therefore, in India at least, people do not regard him as a religious man as such, but he's accepted in a higher spirituality.
Sri Aurobindo, then simply Aurobindo Ghosh, was imprisoned by the British in 1908 on charges of sedition. He awaited some indication of a divine purpose, and after a month of solitary confinement, he heard the voice of Krishna. On his release, he explained, "Day after day, he showed me his wonders and made me realize the utter truth of the Hindu religion. I had had many doubts before. I was brought up in England amongst foreign ideas and in an atmosphere entirely foreign. About many things in Hinduism, I had once been inclined to believe that they were imaginations, that there was much of dream in it, much that was delusion and Maya. But now, day after day, I realized in the mind, I realized in the heart, I realized in the body the truths of the Hindu religion. They became living experiences to me, and things were opened to me which no material science could explain. He continues this description of the message he received from the divine. He heard Krishna say, "It is for the Dharma and by the Dharma that India exists. To magnify the religion means to magnify the country. I have shown you that I am everywhere and in all men and in all things, that I am in this movement, and I am not only working in those who are striving for the country, but I am also in those who oppose them and stand in the path. I am working in everybody, and whatever men may think or do, they can do nothing but help in my purpose." In accordance with the divine command, Sri Aurobindo withdrew from political activities and moved to this house in Pondicherry, where he spent the remaining 40 years of his life in spiritual discipline. For 30 years he did not leave this room, but he had a spiritual collaborator who, under the name of the Mother, founded the Sri Aurobindo ashram in 1926. Although it might appear that the Mother was a disciple or successor to Sri Aurobindo, he insisted that she was his equal, or rather, that they were one and the same consciousness. As Sita was to Ram, and as Radha was to Krishna, so the Mother was the spiritual consort to Sri Aurobindo. As she explained, "Without him I exist not. Without me he is unmanifest."
Sri Aurobindo conceives the whole thought, and it is the Mother who puts it in practice. As for example, her whole complete conception of Auroville derives from this thought, and therefore it is a very important aspect of Sri Aurobindo that Mother had to be together in order to develop this consciousness. Another reason for it is this, that the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, according to the Hindu philosophy, would be the Shiva and the Shakti. And in order to execute a thought that is presented, you need the Shakti. And it is the Mother who is the Shakti, who is able to execute what Sri Aurobindo conceives.
Since 1926, members of the ashram, now numbering several thousands, have followed the spiritual discipline which Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have expounded and exemplified. Sri Aurobindo explained, "The way of yoga followed here has a different purpose from others, for its aim is not only to rise out of the ordinary, ignorant world consciousness into the divine consciousness, but to bring the supramental power of that divine consciousness into the ignorance of the mind, life, and body, and to transform them, to manifest the divine here, and to create a divine life in matter." The essential question of the nature of the self might be answered in traditional Hinduism like this: What am I? I am divine, but I perceive myself as Maya. I am an inner and an outer. Both myself and the world are Brahman and Maya. I must go into the self. I must overcome the self as Maya and realize the self as divine. I must go out to the world. I must overcome the world as Maya and realize the world as divine. Sri Aurobindo would alter these concepts. What am I? Really, I am divine, but I have not yet evolved to my full divineness. I am an inner and an outer. Both I and the world are divine and evolving toward divineness. I must go into the self. I must evolve toward unity of self. I must go into the world. I must assist the evolution of the world to its full divineness, its oneness with Brahman. The new term is evolution. Sri Aurobindo sees the self and the world as evolving out of insentient matter, out of which evolves life, or organic matter. Mind or mentality evolves out of life. Finally, at the present time, the mind is struggling to reach the next evolutionary stage, the supermind.
Due to Sri Aurobindo's and the Mother's lives and works, a new element has come down and got grounded in human nature. That they established in themselves this new consciousness, which then entered into the Earth's atmosphere, and it is permanently there at work.
The entire evolutionary process from matter to supermind and presumably beyond is possible only because from the beginning the divine involved itself in this process as its cause and purpose. The divine has ever been in time and space, seeking to express itself through the perfection or total spiritualization of the physical, vital, and mental. The divine involved itself simply by ananda, for the joy or the delight of it. When the present struggle to evolve to supermind is realized, the supermind will transform each successive level of evolution, even to the spiritual transformation or divinization of the human body and all material existence. The Mother chose as the testing area for supermind the experimental city of Auroville, near Pondicherry, founded in 1968. The center of Auroville will be the Matra Mandir, a temple for meditation which blends the physical and spiritual dimensions of Sri Aurobindo's vision. The Charter of Auroville expresses its spiritual basis and goal. Auroville belongs to nobody in particular. Auroville belongs to humanity as a whole. But to live in Auroville, one must be a willing servitor of the divine consciousness. Auroville wants to be the bridge between the past and the future, taking advantage of all discoveries from without and within. Auroville will boldly spring towards future realizations.
Well, people arrive at Auroville from around the world for all sorts of reasons. Some come, obviously, they've studied Sri Aurobindo and what the Mother has said, and they want to see what this experiment is. Others, perhaps, just intellectual curiosity. They've heard about an experiment and they want to go and visit it. Others just stumble across it. They don't sometimes even know why they ever got there. But it's really what happens to people when they get there which matters, not so much the reasons they came for. Because there is undoubtedly something happening on that spot which does have an effect on people. Sometimes completely against their will. People arrive with a completely atheistic outlook and find themselves changing. Something is beginning to work within them. They're opening to something which previously they'd smothered and it was shut down deep inside themselves. It's this mix of people for many reasons which is making Auroville and keeping Auroville developing slowly as it is at the moment. And it's right, of course, that there should be a mix, because if it's truly to be an experiment representing mankind, then every type of man and woman must be there, not just the godly sort of yogic-minded person, but people with completely different outlooks. That's the only way that the experiment can be a true experiment for mankind. It's the only way in which one can provide a sort of a true melting pot where the individual greed aspect gives way to the group need, which on a broader scale, of course, is what mankind requires for its own future. This is not to say, of course, that every individual becomes just an amorphous being. He loses entirely his own personality or anything like that. Of course not. Rather that with his personality, with his background, he is able to contribute in a unified way to something greater than he or a small group of individuals thinking like him will be able to achieve on this earth.
These devotees at the graveside of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother seek spiritual resolution of the conflicts inherent in human life, because individuals continue to experience the conflict symbolized by Arjuna on the battlefield, and to seek that perfect equanimity taught him by Lord Krishna. Krishna's command to Arjuna, "Be of peace," is not superseded by other manifestations of the divine as they descend into history and into the human spirit, but the